Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. I am here with the 28th installment of 31 Days of Witchcraft. 31 Days of Witchcraft is a tag being hosted in May 2020 by Heather Carter, and I'll link below to her channel where you can find out more about that. I'm sure, of course, being in day 28, if you're watching these, in anything like chronological order, you've already read all of the prompts and are familiar with this, but I'm putting the same info in all of my description boxes for these videos. So if you happen upon this one first, you can check out that link and you'll see all the prompts that we've been discussing for the month. So day 28 asks us, what belief system, if any, were you raised with? How has this impacted your personal practice? Okay, so I was raised Catholic. I went to a public Catholic school from age 4 to 17, I guess. So all of elementary school and high school, I was in a Catholic school system, which meant in elementary school, religion is kind of incorporated into the curriculum in different kinds of ways throughout, the different grades. And then in high school for grade 9, 10, 11, 12, I had to take one religion credit per year, 3 of which were, very much so like Catholic focused, and one of which was a world religions credit. Learning about some different religions in that way, but in the context of a Catholic school, which of course shaped what we were learning. I had a really hard time in Catholic school, I will say, but I should mention though that I wasn't raised in a particularly religious home. And here, when I read the question of what belief system were you raised with, I'm just taking that as like a religious or spiritual belief system. My home was not particularly religious. We didn't really pray at home. We, for the vast majority of my youth, were not regular churchgoers even. And insofar as we were, it was more so like while my father's mother was still alive and she was a dedicated churchgoer, going with her and some of the extended family, more so than, my parents themselves being particularly religious. I think neither of them would describe themselves as religious now, really. So, in a lot of ways, the belief system of Catholicism was, much more something that I was encountering at school than at home. At home, my parents were pretty non-religious, I would say. For the most part, we went through things like Catholic baptism and things like that, but that was really about it. Now, I, had a hard time in a Catholic school. I think that, being a woman and being a queer person, a lot of things about Catholic religion as I was being taught it didn't sit right. Certainly, ideas about, reproductive autonomy, ideas about marriage, things like this. As I grew up and went through kind of early teens to mid-teens, I started to find myself more and more, on the opposite side of, pretty much every issue I could think of as the side that the Catholic Church, as presented by my school, was positioned on, right? So it was, at times going to school really felt like a battle. I was good. I had, a really great group of friends and that was okay. And I did pretty well academically as well. But the religion credits were always interesting because I was quite inclined to arguing. I'm still inclined to arguing in some ways. But I was, particularly getting into grade kind of 9, 10, age 14, 15, 16, I really started pushing back. And I had discovered the writings of Emma Goldman, incredible anarchist thinker and activist and feminist, and was just totally taken by this, right? And still am. And so I was really aggressively pushing back against Catholicism. And a big part of how that kind of manifested for me at that age in high school and a little bit afterwards, was kind of taking on a very anti-organized religion attitude towards the world, right? Because as I experienced it, and Catholicism was my frame of reference for religion and the role religion would play in my life, right? And in that context, I became very much opposed to this kind of idea of organized religion, in that it felt very much like, another patriarchal power that be trying to constrain me and tell me what to do and tell me that I was wrong and restrict my freedom and oppress me, and didn't even allow for women in positions of leadership, all these kinds of things, right? So I became quite staunchly atheist at that time, not necessarily atheist in a way that I thought, nobody should be religious or that religion couldn't be meaningful for someone, but very much like, this is not a thing I need. The way that this is being presented to me, at the very least, like, this is not for me, don't need it. So I became very much an atheist, and very much, science oriented, I'll say, very, interested in being independent and interested in being my own person and doing things my own way. And, I think a lot of like teenagers, go through this kind of period. And there was always a bit of dissonance growing up because, again, like this stronger version of Catholicism, the thou shalt not, contraceptives are a sin version of Catholicism, that I was being taught, like, that wasn't really echoed at home for me. So a lot of the positions I found myself taking on, in terms of women's rights and things like this, that I saw the church as being very hostile to, my parents, for example, weren't particularly hostile to at all, if anything. And now, actually, I'm pretty sure that now my parents know a little bit more. They might not have actually sent us to Catholic school if they had fully kind of known what that would entail. But I think that the decision for us to go there was as much based on, the academic performances of different schools in the city I lived in as anything else. But yeah, so I didn't have that messaging reinforced at home in that way. And I wasn't, except insofar as it got me in trouble at school, I wasn't, punished or given a hard time at home about challenging the orthodoxy that I was being given, right? So that impulse to be questioning and to be a critical person was something that, there was space for at home, and I'm appreciative of that. Now, in terms of how this has impacted my personal practice now, I know there's another question that's earlier on in the weeks of this 31 Days of Witchcraft that talks about how did you come to your personal path. So I'm trying to talk about these two things, and I'm filming both of those videos on the same day. You'll tell I'm wearing the same outfit. I'm trying to talk about these in ways that aren't totally repetitive. But how has that belief system of being raised in a Catholic school, in a Catholic-ish or non-religious home, impacted my personal practice now? Well, I would say that compared to a lot of folks that I talk to who are also pagan identified or who identify as witches, I came to this path that I'm on, pagan path that I'm on, quite late into my adult life compared to a lot of other folks I talk to. Certainly, I was gifted tarot cards by my mom and my grandma when I was a kind of early teen, and I was very interested in them, and that was all fine, and I had a set of runes, and I was interested in that, and that was all fine, and I was interested in, witchcraft of the Charmed and Sabrina the Teenage Witch kind of variety, but I wasn't, like, exploring a pagan religious path in any meaningful sense then. And then having this, aggressively atheist view of the world, partly formed as a reaction to Catholic dogma that was being piled on me, meant that I didn't look for a spiritual or religious practice that might suit me until well into my adulthood. I haven't been doing this that long, At least not compared to, I hear folks talk about, having been witches since they were 12 or 14 or 15, and that wasn't the case for me. I was not really orienting myself towards a pagan path till into my 20s. And that is an effect, absolutely, of the belief system I was raised in and the way that it shaped my view towards religion and what religion could be. I would say that the belief system I was raised with made me a feminist and made me able to articulate, feminist positions in places that they weren't very welcome. And that's a commitment that I've carried forward. And, my personal practice is very much oriented towards social justice, oriented towards feminism. And those kinds of orientations are not orientations I was raised with per se, but certainly my kind of earliest kind of activist-minded view towards the world was formed in confrontation with the belief system that I was schooled in. So there's that aspect that my personal practice has been influenced as well. And I think that overall, and this will be the last thing I'll say, trying to keep these videos short, I think that, my background going through Catholic school and that has left me very much like still so as a very critical person who is not inclined towards anything really, but certainly any religious or spiritual path that is hierarchical, that is dogmatic, that has a kind of set in stone, there's one right way kind of approach. I'm very, I think, again, because of being raised with a Catholicism that was very much that kind of, one way, thou shalt not. I'm very averse to that now. I'm still very averse to that. And so in terms of influencing my personal practice, it has made me more open to, being willing to leave things that don't work for me, right? And not trying to necessarily kind of wedge myself into traditions if the whole of that doesn't work for me, or being willing to kind of make things my own, I guess. So that is an influence on my personal practice as well. And that's all I'll say for today's prompt. I will see you again tomorrow for day 29 of 31 Days of Witchcraft, almost at the end. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. And again, I'll see you tomorrow.